Kaixo, nire izena da Larkin, Pointon, Olabarria. Elgetan jaio naiz eta orain dantzaria naiz eta mundu guztiatik joaten naiz, viajatzen eta dantzatzen. Hi everyone, my name is Larkin Pointon, Olavarria. We're in Elgeta, which is where I was born. It's in the Basque Country. The question is, what does being Basque mean to me? I think this is a very difficult question. I think Euskal Herria, like the definition of that, just means like the land of Euskera, which is the language. And of course, I think what's a deep part of what being Basque means is speaking the language. The language is somewhat of a mystery to the world, and they're still learning, but many people don't know where it's from. It's not a Latin-based language, and it's surrounded by Latin-based languages, and somehow it's survived for a long time. I was speaking to my aunt the other day, and she reminded me that Latin used to be spoken by probably at the time the majority of the world, and somehow this language survived and surpassed even that one, which is interesting. So I think speaking the language is a big part of being Basque, but of course there's so much more to a culture than just the language. The music, the people, my friends here, my family here. I think like being a person who has grown up in two different places, not just because of being from not only America, but also the Basque Country, but also two different households. My parents are divorced. My father is an Irish American, my mother is Basque. And I think my life has always kind of been always in transition. And so I think for me, being Basque looks very different than what maybe someone here might say being Basque is. But I think that's what's so interesting and cool about identity, is that it's different for everyone. And for me, it's a place that feels like home, that challenges me, that encourages me to seek myself in my experiences. And yeah, so I think it's a tough question to answer, but I think, at the base of the question, what is being Basque for me? I think for me it's feeling at home, even if that is sometimes uncomfortable. Yeah. This is the Elgetako herri pilotalekua, or like the frontoia, the local fronton, which is a typical Basque game. There's a few different games that are played in here. Escupelota, cesta punta, palak. Yeah. But this is just I guess it's a place for a typical Basque game. When I was a young kid, I was lucky enough to be able to come to the Basque Country to visit my grandmother and my family and my friends here. And every day we would come here and play escupelota, play soccer, play card games. There's a couple places in the US that have frontons, because a lot of Basques actually moved to the US. There's a fronton there's one in Colorado. There might be one in Boise. There's also like Cesta Punta or Hialeah. Yeah. There was a big scene in Miami of people playing that game.
Jai is like a party, no? It's like...
Jai, Shaq.
Festa, ez dakit nola da, baina...
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure. I've never
And
never looked it up.
what does it mean?
Alai, ez dakit.
Pozik, Alay is happy.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I don't know if it works with the name of
the game?
Of the game,
Yeah, I didn't know that.
but
When I was young, one of my dad's old friends gifted me a cesta, which is like, I have it at home in Colorado. And I remember that being a really big moment. I was like, oh my gosh, I have a cesta punta and I can like go play it. And I used to play in here by myself. And yeah. So I think these spaces, these places are really important here in the Basque Country because they signify a piece of the culture, something that's very unique to this place and these people. And it's also just a gathering point. There's a bar right next door and everyone's always there. And okay, so we are at the Elgetako Gaztelekua, which is essentially like a youth center here in Elgeta. I said Gaztelekua, which is a little bit different. Gaztetxea and Gaztelekua are slightly different. One is like a youth-occupied space given to other youth, controlled by, ran by youth. Gaztelekua is like a place that the city kind of helps with. There's like managers and owners. So I apologize. Elgetako Gaztetxea, not Gaztelekua. And this really bad burner is a piece of graffiti that I did a long time ago at the beginning of my at the beginning of my obsession with dance, with hip hop, with that whole world. I did this when I was very young. I was probably like 13 or 14. As you can tell, it's not great and very humble beginnings. But the local youth center let me do like a piece on the wall here, which I was really grateful for. And I think like that's something that I'm extremely grateful for just in general with the people who have been around me in kind of my journey as a dancer and as an artist and as a person who's trying to make my way in the world in a creative way. I've been really lucky to just have people around me who have encouraged me to try silly things, to try things that are difficult, things that are filled with creativity. I think I feel super lucky for that. Not only people here in Euskadi and in the Basque Country, people like Ambolo's brother, Mikel, he also like really encouraged me as an artist. And also Ambolo here was a huge part of my journey as not only as an artist and a dancer, but as a person. I think like these people are still and were a huge part of my growing up. They believed in me, they still believe in me, and they encourage me. And I think like as a person who's trying to, again, make my way through the world in a creative way, I think those people around you who not only support you, but who question you, who ask you tough questions, who check in on you, man, those people they've changed my life, and I am so grateful for that. Yeah. I think like I started with dance and with hip hop just through the encouragement of my father. He was a huge part of my reason for wanting to start to dance. He took me to a Marcel Marceau show. Marcel Marceau is a mime, famous mime. And we went and saw him, and he was this old man. It was one of his last performances before he passed away. And it was a single old man on stage in front of like 4,000 people at the Buell Theater, which we later performed at, which was a crazy kind of full circle moment. But in front of 3,000 people, this one, he must have been 87 or almost 90, and you could see these minimal movements that he was doing, how they affected the audience and how they changed the the ambiance and the feeling of the room. And I think from that moment forward, I knew I wanted to move. I knew I wanted to create art, and I knew I wanted to express myself in any way that I could. And yeah, I think the encouragement of my father, encouragement of my mother, encouragement of the people here, the guy behind the camera, has been a huge part of my journey. And the encouragement of so many peeps who've just told me to keep going. That's been something that's like been told me many times in my life, and I've tried to listen to that. And yeah, I hope I can keep trying to do that. There's many songs in Basque that I love, but there's one that I think is very sad, but also very beautiful. And it goes like this. It goes, Zergaitik, 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 zergaitik negar egin, zeruan izarra dago, itxaso aldetik. And I just think that is a very beautiful song. It's, the words are pretty much, why do you cry? Under the shade, or in the sky, there is a star next to the ocean. And the song keeps going, but I don't know, that song has always stuck with me. I don't know why, but yeah. So right now we are in the heart of Elgeta, the little town where I was born. This town has, I think, 1,000 people living in it, and it's the town where my grandfather's from. It's the town where my grandmother's from, and where their parents are from, and so on and so on and so on. My grandmother was born in a farmhouse. My mom was born in Elgeta, in the house right back here. Yeah, this small little town on the hillside has so much history. It's wild. The church we are sitting next to dates back to the 13th century, and it was also bombed and destroyed mostly during the Spanish Civil War. And also, just on the hillside over here, was the front line of the Spanish Civil War. So on this side were the Republicans, and on the other side were the Spanish nationalists and Franco. And a lot of people died, and a lot of that pain and history is felt not only in this little town, but in so many of the towns in this part of the world, and also throughout the country, but specifically in the Basque Country. When my mom was a child, it wasn't legal for her to speak Basque. Their names were changed. She only recently, in the last year, changed her name back to being spelt the original Basque way. Before it was spelled Agur. Before it was spelled in a more Spanish way. And even the town name, Elgeta, it was spelled with a U, which is, supposed to be more Spanish. Just a lot of history here. I remember when I was a kid, I was here for quite some time, and I spent some time with my grandmother, who at the time she must have been 80 something. And every day she went to Mass in this church. And I went with her one day to the chapel, or not to the chapel, but to Mass. And the Mass was in Basque, which is like an ancient language itself. And the church was started in the 13th century. And I remember sitting there and watching my grandmother, who was 80 something years old, and she's getting on her knees to pray. And I remember being so moved by that moment. And maybe you can tell, but in all of these videos, I'm like on the verge of tears. I think just because like so much of my identity and my stories that I tell, and like even the movement that I that I do and my dancing and the art that I make comes from the stories and the pain and the things that aren't always told, that aren't always talked about through my parents and through this whole history, not just here, but also through my father and in Ireland and his experiences in Irish American. And yeah, so I think that's why you're feeling so much emotion in these little bits. But all of this goes to say that, oh my gosh, so many stories in this little town that has 1,000 people in it. So many stories, so many untold stories that will, they'll never be told and never be talked about, and that's okay. And yeah, just feel super lucky to be from this little place. Interesting tidbit. Beyond that, so the Romans came to the Basque Country and they established Catholicism like they did in so many other places, all the freaking over the world. But before that, there was so many interesting, creation stories here in the Basque Country. Like there's this character called Amalur, which is like Mother Earth, pretty much, and Hualdunak, and all these different creatures and gods and ideas about how the world was created. And one thing that I think is really interesting is going back to those stories and trying to learn about them, trying to find out about them and figure out how they are meaningful to me now and how I can introduce those stories and those ideas, and maybe not the ideas, but just the feeling of them into my work. And yeah, just something I've been thinking a lot about lately. After so many years of training and working on my foundation as a dancer, thinking about going back to who am I, what do I represent, what are the stories and the ideas that I really connect with as a person, not only connect with, but am connected to. And yeah, so that's something that has really been intriguing me and interesting me lately, is going back to here, to this place and this space, and thinking about who I am and what stories I want to tell moving forward. Yeah. Dude, he's posing right now.
Yeah.
Okay, horrera hitz egin, bale?
Oh, what's next? I feel like this is always the question. What's next? What's next? I think in the last year, I've been honestly trying to not think about that question, about what's next, rather trying to focus on just seeing what comes naturally. I think for a long time, a long time, I was obsessive about goals, about doing certain things, accomplishing certain things, which served me a lot, served me in ways that I couldn't have imagined. Being able to travel, being able to teach, being able to set pieces on people that I never thought I would ever work with, doing commercials, doing industry work, doing all kinds of crazy work. But I think that focus on goals and specificity around success and trying to be successful, I think burnt me out. And as of recent, I've been trying to just focus on seeing what comes. Just seeing what comes naturally and trying to take opportunities that feel right rather than what I think are right, if that makes any sense. I think what comes next is, continuing to focus on taking care of myself and my body and my mind, and going to therapy, and working on my relationships and friendships and the relationship with my parents, and to continue to focus on those things while also continuing to develop my creativity and my storytelling capabilities in every way possible and in any way that I can. I've spent the last decade and some change working on building Project Home, which is a business now and a company that I started with Chris Martin. And also Ambolo was on one of our first big film trips to Iceland. And I want to continue with that because I really care about the community that we've created. I care about the people who are involved, and I love what we've created. And I want to continue doing that. I also want to continue just to develop myself, possibly getting a master's degree, looking at a program at NYU, at some other possible programs. So I think what's next? Taking care of myself, continuing to be creative in any way possible. To take care of the people around me and the people that I care about, and hopefully to thrive. That's, I hope to thrive in any way that I can. So, yeah. Well, I think one of the best things is connection and being with people and meeting new people and, just connecting with others. And I think one of the hardest things is being away from my people. And I think one thing that's interesting is, as I've been doing this for a while now, and a lot of my people are kind of all over the place, and which is awesome, but also really difficult. Like some of the people who I'm closest to are just spread out everywhere, which is great because it gives me the opportunity and a reason to go to some incredible places. But there's also times when I feel like I'm everywhere and nowhere, if that makes sense. Yeah. I think I've changed in the last few years. Before the pandemic, I was traveling quite a bit. It was like maybe 5+ years where the longest I was in one place was maybe 2 weeks, which was a lot. It was awesome and incredible and so beautiful. But it also took a toll on me. And I think I've learned a lot about how to take breaks and how to say no, though I'm still learning that lesson. But learning to take care of myself, to take care of my body, to take care of my mind, which is those have all been really difficult lessons to learn, because having the opportunity to travel and share my art with people around the world is one of the greatest opportunities I could have ever asked for. And also, there have been moments when I've had to take a step back and say, hey, you need to slow down. And I still need to do that at times because it's exciting. It's exciting and fun and interesting and beautiful and difficult and so many adjectives. But continuing to learn how and when to say no, continuing to learn how to take time away. My diet is pretty much when I'm traveling, it's like non-existent. I also really love food so much. So that's honestly one of the best parts about being able to travel and do what I do is that I get to eat so many different kinds of food. But yeah, not having consistency is frustrating, but it's okay. Like whatever, it's not a big problem for me. I'm also really lucky. I don't have any stomach problems. I don't have any allergies. I can eat all that the world has to offer, which I'm really grateful for. What do I bring in my bag? Honestly, not much. I don't like having a lot of stuff. Just in general in my life, I don't have a car. I don't have a house. I don't have a lot of the big purchase items that a lot of people, get and build up as they grow older. I don't like having stuff. And in my bag, I have the essentials. That's really, honestly, it. It's the essentials. And I've tried to keep it to an absolute minimum. I don't check in my luggage. I try not to check in my luggage just because I lost a bag a long time ago and I was like, I'm never doing that again. So yeah, keep 2 bags on me. I think the most important items that I keep with me are just like my notebook, some good books, and honestly, just that's about it. Just clothes and my notebook, and yeah, not much, which is okay. I like that. I like not having much. I prefer to be that way. I prefer it that way. I feel like in my journey as a person, as an artist, as a creative, I think one thing I've tried to dedicate myself to is learning how to create in any way possible. So like beyond just dancing, I like to dabble in a lot of things, too many things sometimes. Producing music, producing beats, illustration, drawing, editing, coloring, reading, writing, poetry, photography. Also, like a lot of, I'm trying to learn some other technologies beyond like just like editing and illustration. So also trying to learn about Touch Designer and some coding. Also, like when it comes to like my business, and I like to like, yeah, I do probably too much. Yeah, make clothes. Yeah, I like designing clothing. I try to be creative in every way possible. At least I try to be. I try to always learn new things and try new things and be bad at things. And also because I think sometimes my brain is that way a little bit, like a little bit too much going on. I'll start one thing and then switch to another thing, which is, but I enjoy that. I enjoy learning all of the things. I feel like I've always tried to do that. I'm not the best at any of those things, but I try really hard to build my foundation and to learn, to continue learning and to always humble myself with new creative ways of being. Yeah. It's a tough question. Advice to give someone who wants to be creative or be an entrepreneur or kind of go on their own path. Oh my gosh. I don't know that there's much advice I could give you other than continuously try and know that it will be difficult. And yeah, none of this is mind-blowing, but there's this Joseph Campbell quote that my dad shared with me when I was younger. And it's, you enter the forest at its darkest point where there is no path. And if I would encourage you to look up that quote. And it's always kind of struck me, and I've always thought about that whenever I am struggling, because I do a lot. But I always think about that quote and know that this is also a Joseph Campbell thing, but like following your bliss. Following your bliss doesn't mean you will always be happy, and it doesn't mean the path will be known. It means you will enter the forest at its darkest point, and where there is no path. And I think I am so incredibly lucky to have been able to try this path and go on this path. And for anyone out there who is willing and able and wanting to try to go in their own way, enter the forest at its darkest point where there is no path. Continue to follow your bliss. I think those are not my words, but they've been helpful words for me. When I was in high school, I had a job at a butcher shop, and I worked there for 4 or 5 years, called Your Butcher Frank. And some incredible guys worked there. One of them, his name was Mac. He was a kind of a father figure to me growing up. An incredible man. He was an incredible artist, and just an overall creative and great person. He had children and a house and a wife, and worked his freaking butt off all the time. And he would always give me rides home after work. And on my last day at Your Butcher Frank, he gave me a ride home. And now the guys who worked at the butcher shop, these are, I guess, like, yeah, they're men, and they didn't often divulge their emotions or go deep in that way. But when he was giving me a ride home on my last day of work, I remember when I was getting out of the car, he had like some tears in his eyes, and he told me, he's just like, "Larkin, keep going." And that has always stuck with me. That moment of like just not just vulnerability, but also of him being real with me and opening up in that way, and really encouraging me to follow my bliss and to follow my path, even though it might not be a normal one. That moment has always stuck with me, and it's a touchstone for me. And whenever I feel like not doing all of this anymore, I always think about that. And so I continue to keep going, and it's served me to do so. Yeah, I'm not saying any of you or I should keep going at the cost of your own, health or whatever. But I think the sentiment of just continuing forward on your path, and even though you might not know where it's going, is really, really valuable. Really valuable words. So, yeah, keep going. I think that has served me. Dude, that cow is going off right now. Wait, can I say one more thing?
Of course.
All right, get out of here.
Bye.
Investigausbat. Another thing, I think I said this earlier, but I'm going to say it again. I think I've felt it this year especially. Dude, that cow was going crazy. No, I felt it this year especially. The guy behind the camera, Ambolo, Ibon, the Crow Films. What a pleasure and an honor it has been to know this person. I think like having people in your life who support you no matter what and who question you and who guide you, oh man, those people are invaluable, and hold onto them tight. Yeah, and follow the Crow Films. Realidades. Follow, subscribe, like, do all the things, because this guy is so incredible. He's such a good person, and a great artist, and a good friend. And I think, like, yeah, what more reason do you need to, to check something out? So do it, party people. Watch this guy's stuff.
Esse aí.
It's